Hi folks, okay, it is time now to talk about a particular transit that is coming up on the 18th. Today is the 15th as I do this, and that is the fact that a retrograde Mercury is going to conjunct the Sun on the 18th, of August. Now, you all know that there's a weekly overview out there for this week, posted a few days ago, I think on Sunday or Monday. That, of course, is the video that will ground you for the week, and it is an eventful week, demanding action and demanding a certain amount of motivation. Sorry, my cat is walking around in circles waiting to sit down, and it's just always the most interesting process as to how many circles it takes to get someone to sit down, and now he is sitting down. Glory be. I was just like, I was gonna get dizzy out of my peripheral vision there. So sweet and so funny. Anyway, so the weekly overview is of course there to ground you for the week, and considering we're heading towards the Aquarius full moon on the 19th, which is squaring Uranus, and the Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini, which was exact, yesterday on the 14th. And of course, is squaring Saturn. I think Mars squares Saturn today. Jupiter squares Saturn on the day of the full moon on the 19th. And of course, Venus in Virgo is getting in position to square Jupiter and Mars and oppose Saturn. And the Venus-Saturn opposition is also exact on the day of the full moon. So on the day of the full moon, we've actually got the T-square exact. Jupiter squares Saturn, Venus opposes Saturn, and of course Venus squares Jupiter. Venus actually ends up squaring Jupiter on the 18th Pacific time, but it's all getting exact then. And squares create a certain amount of necessary tension, dynamic, demanding action as we head to this Aquarius full moon squaring Uranus. What needs to be done on the Leo Aquarius axis that is going to allow us to move in the direction that is right for us in the Taurus part of our chart. I'm not going to do a repeat of the weekly overview. You know where to find it. The 30-minute $50 single area focus readings are still active. Thank you to everybody who has participated in that, and my gratitude to everyone associated with the channel and watches it. Really meeting some of the people that I have met through the growth of this channel, particularly since January, but even throughout with this channel, has been one of the unexpected joys and blessings of my life. The cordiality of the communication and the tone that is overwhelmingly deployed, the support is absolutely. I'm thinking about some of the recent email correspondence and people being thoughtful about what they want, and you're just amazing. So please be thanked for that. Know that if you want to avail of, as I said, and there's a video, not the weekly overview, but the one before then is a video describing that 30-minute single topic reading. So you're welcome to take a look at that. And if it's something that you want to avail of, feel free. I will be honest, I'm still trying to figure out, and it's through no fault of anybody. It's really my own tendency to, am I able to keep it within a certain time frame for myself and stay focused? That's sort of my challenge. So I'm actually enjoying exploring this particular offering and getting a sense of who do I need to be when I show up for these readings, to honor my own time. I find that my clients, for the most part, are very cognizant of trying to honor my time. And it's not that I'm being verbose for the sake of being verbose. As I've said to you before, astrology readings are you can't just, things aren't done when an alarm goes off. So you have to, depending on what it is someone is going through, and it's a cumulative thing. But I will also say we have successfully been able to do a number of readings that stay around the 30 to 40 minute mark. A number of them, and for that I'm also kind of grateful. A few of them have gone a little bit, but that again has more to do with, can I myself exercise a certain amount of discipline to kind of curb that and get to the point. I'm happy to have a little bit more practice on that. So those readings are still on offer. I'm wondering whether to make it a permanent offering or whether to kind of make it something that is offered during Mercury retrogrades or something like that. And time will tell. As I get a few more under my belt for the next few weeks, I'll have a better sense of how I feel about that part of the offering. My normal readings and everything are still there. There are 2 or 3 things I want to mention about the astrology of the time before I go into the Mercury cycles, which are an important transit, I'll call it that, and we'll get to it. First and foremost, I hope that we all can appreciate the fact that a retrograde Mercury right now that is not stationary and that is moving with some speed means that there is greater flow in our life. And I would just say, appreciate it for what it is, because when it comes to August 4th, the few days before that and after that, and just another heads up, as we get to August the 28th, when Mercury is going to be stationary to go direct, the few days before that and after that, we can say something like August 25th to, the end of August 30th, September 1st, expect the doldrums to hit again. When Mercury is stationary, often important Mercury retrograde related conversations and communications can occur that are of the nature of making certain things visible to us, clear to us about which direction we want to go and what we need to pursue, and what is Mercury trying to tell us about where it is to focus our attention and what baskets to put our eggs in, so to speak. I know I've used that analogy a lot recently, but it's the one that works for me for Mercury retrograde. And yes, there's also a peak of what we commonly experience with Mercury retrograde, sort of the glitches and the delays and the confusion and the bizarreness, and how many times you have to log in to a website that you log into every 2 days normally, and all of a sudden things happen, and technology and craziness, all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that also happens when Mercury is stationary is that there is this strange lull in communication. There's a strange absence of flow, and depending on the houses ruled by Mercury in your chart, that lull can create its own stress. Having a retrograde Mercury moving with some speed eases some of that during this process. But as you get to about August the 25th, in about 10 days time, just prepare and know that lull is coming up again. So if there's efforts you want to make to manage that period, now would be the time to make those efforts. We are having the Sun-Mercury conjunction, Mercury retrograde conjunction on the 18th, which is what this video is about. And when we have a combust Mercury, again, 2 things can happen. With a combust Mercury, I really find that the logistical and communication and technical breakdowns and challenges and glitches occur. Sorry, it feels like I've got something in my eye. So just be aware around from August 15th to August 20th, 21st, you may feel this peak of delays and technology and miscommunications, and so kind of deal with that. Just kind of be patient around it, because those kinds of Mercury retrograde glitches, bizarre conversations, transportation issues, they can cause real stress. They can cause in the moment, short term, but real irritation. It can really irk us. So composure and temperance, to use a tarot word, are recommended in that regard. With this particular full moon on the 19th, as we head towards it, it may really become clear what this Mercury retrograde is trying to tell us, because the full moon is going to be opposite not only the sun, which it has to be by definition. A full moon is the sun opposite the moon. The sun is in Leo, the moon is in Aquarius, but a retrograde Mercury meets up with the sun on the 18th, and on the day of the full moon, the moon opposes not only the sun but also the retrograde Mercury. So whatever it is, when Mercury and the sun, or any personal planet and the sun, meet up, that personal planet, from my perspective, is given its marching orders by the sun based on what the sun knows now, what the sun knows currently. It's a conversation. It's as if Mercury and the sun are going to sit down and have tea, or grab a meal and have a discussion. The sun is our innermost knowing self, utterly, profoundly connected to source and therefore intuitive. And with the retrograde Mercury meeting up with the sun, this is the start of a communication cycle in Leo. And of course, the end of the communication cycle in Aries. I'm going to expand on that in a second. But the idea of a start of a communication cycle means that Mercury takes his marching orders from the sun in Leo and says, okay, as a result of this Mercury retrograde, this is where we're going to be focusing on our communication, transaction, cognition, communication, transactions, agenda, and direction. This is on our agenda for communications till December. What we're going to be creating through communications, creating through technology, what we're going to be communicating about, what we're going to be expressing, what we're going to be trying to make work and make sense of. Now, Mercury is still retrograde till the 28th. And so that is one phase. The first phase of a communication cycle is when a retrograde Mercury meets up with the sun to when Mercury is still retrograde. And requirements will be defined during that time. But it could be that at the time of this full moon, as you head towards Monday the 19th, there's an intuitive flare-up in the Aquarius part of the chart around what this communication that occurs related to the Leo part of your chart. Full moons occur opposite to where the sun is doing his annual review and where Mercury and Venus have either recently completed their transits or in the middle of their transits, or the transits are coming up. And in the middle of a month, new moon to new moon, August 4th, new moon in Leo to September 2nd, new moon in Virgo. In the middle of the month, you have a full moon in the opposite part of the chart. Right now, the new moons and the full moons are following a more intuitive cycle. The new moon occurs, and 2 weeks later, the full moon happens in the opposite part of the chart. And the opposite part of the chart, because opposing houses have a kind of a yin-yang, what is in one house is not in the other, and what is in the other house is not in the one. But it's a related theme. They go together. They complete each other. The first and the seventh house are mirrors of each other. Who am I? Who am I in relationship and partnership when promises are made? Tacit, written, verbal, the breaking of which can cause emotional and financial turmoil. Second house, my income, my resources, my sense of self-worth, my sense of independence. Eighth house, the reality of my codependency, where I share my emotional and financial intimacy and involvement. The third house, mundane, local communication. The ninth house, communication with spirit. The fourth house, private, foundational, home, land, real estate. 10th house, career, public life. 5th house, me as a solo, effulgent, self-confident, following what I love to do, player, star, comfortable with what I enjoy. In the 11th house, the collective, groups, ensembles, becoming part of a group, serving humanity, as opposed to oneself and one's own pleasure in the 5th. The 6th house, productivity, how we're managing our 24/7, 7 days a week, in relation to how we take care of ourselves, our health, our well-being, and our responsibilities to others, our job, our chores. Arguably the busiest part of the chart. In the 12th house, the least busy part of the chart, where we release, where we let go and let God, where we put up our feet, where we receive from spirit, where we isolate ourselves and give ourselves a timeout, where we process. So these opposing houses complete each other. So when you have a new moon in one and the bulk of the opportunity is in the Leo part of the chart, the Aquarius part of the chart, whichever houses they occupy in your chart, is going to have a moment of, around the time of full moon, rearing its head to say, all this work that you're doing in the Leo part of the chart, what does it mean to the Aquarius part of the chart? There could be completions. There could be visibility on the positive side of things. There could be offers. There could be developments. And of course, right now, because this full moon squares Uranus, it has to do with following the path that is right for you in the Taurus part of the chart, one of the three parts of the chart where our opportunities are, where our forward movement is, where excitement is, where our adventure is. The Aries part of the chart, where we've got the North Node eclipses currently, all the way till the end of the first week of June of next year. The Taurus part of the chart, where we've got Uranus, and the Gemini part of the chart, where we've got Mars and Jupiter currently. And the Gemini part of the chart also playing a strong role as we go into this full moon, insofar as it squares Saturn in Pisces, and Venus in Virgo is squaring Mars and Jupiter in Gemini, but also talking about another opposition, Venus in Pisces being opposed by Saturn in Venus in Virgo, being opposed by Saturn in Pisces, and having to serve that. Now I'm going into the territory of the weekly overview. Saturn in Pisces and the stabilizing and the responsibility with which Saturn wants us to handle the affairs of the Pisces part of the chart, very important this week. Very important this week, as one of the rulers of this full moon in Aquarius, but also given this T-square, really making its presence felt. Demanding that the benefits that Venus is bringing in Virgo serve it in a responsible, grounded, structured, strategic manner. Demanding that whatever it is that Mars and Jupiter are trying to end and create in the Gemini part of the chart serves it in the Pisces part of the chart. So the full moon will bring a flare up in the Aquarius part of the chart. On the positive side, visibility, completion, offers. On a more challenging side, endings, emotional and intuitive flare-ups and reactions. But with the full moon, as I always say, whether you're about to throw a tantrum or someone else is about to throw a tantrum, first and foremost, see if you can avoid the tantrum, but listen to the message. Because some emotional and intuitive truth is being expressed. The pot of milk comes to a boil. Also, as this week continues towards Monday, expect the pace to continue to agree. Expect to find yourself busier, working, hopping, dealing with this, dealing with that. And getting that emotional irkedness is only going to increase. As I say, the productivity increases, but the productivity also goes a little haywire as you get closer to the approaching full moon. It's productive, but it's emotionally jittery, shaky, not entirely grounded because the moon is getting full. Once the full moon happens on the 19th and we head into next week, as I've always said to you, the week after a full moon is the most emotionally balanced time to be productive, truly. We have the moon still sizable in the sky. We still have our lunar energy, but we are done with the approaching intensity of this sort of lunar wave crashing to the shore as we head towards the full moon. And as I look at the astrology of next week, it is exactly this. We have these squares, oppositions developing as we head towards the 19th, and then the full moon happens, and then next week's astrology is relatively benign. I mean, the only thing that we're dealing with is that we're getting closer and closer to the 28th for Mercury to be stationary to go direct. And that doesn't even happen next week, I don't think. Give me a second. If the 19th is on Monday, then it is the 26th. That is going to be the following Monday. Yeah, we don't even deal with the heart of Mercury going direct. We don't even deal with on the week of the 19th. We have the full moon, and after that, the energy of this growing, mounting, demanding attention. And with Mercury retrograde, remember, if you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, you might be more decisive and clear about where you want to go. If you don't have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, if you have Mercury direct in your birth chart, then you still get to experience a retrograde Mercury stripping away fantasies and making it clear to you as to which direction you really need to go in. Why are you going back to the drawing board? What do you need to reassess? What do you need to recommit to? Where's the energy? Where's their fantasy? What have you learned about yourself and what you were committing to? Or what may actually be going on with something that is giving you pause with regard to whether you should continue to put your eggs in that basket or another one. So all of that remains. But the pace increases this week. Enjoy the fact that Mercury has a certain amount of speed for this week and next week. Continue to be productive and action oriented and see what Mercury retrograde is clarifying for you outside of as we head to the 18th, expect the logistical Mercury stuff to become jarring. But this full moon on the 19th may really provide some clarity and answers as to what this Mercury retrograde is about. Because the full moon opposes the sun and the retrograde Mercury. And the conversation that they will have had. Mercury's combust because it is blinded by the light of the sun and not visible and not able to transmit its energy according to certain astrological traditions, which is part of what makes Mercury-related stuff kind of go glitchy. But the sun, based on what it knows by August the 18th, 2024, is going to sit down with Mercury and say, this is what your inner self knows, and that it's some of that, what is that is going to be downloaded to your mental and communicative self, and your Mercury then will start to go off and move forward and act related to that conjunction all the way through December. Now, before we get to more details about the Mercury cycle, there's one thing I wanted to address. One of the viewers of the channel posed a question. I talked in my weekly overview about the fact that Mars and Jupiter were conjuncting. They conjuncted yesterday in Gemini. With Jupiter, as I always say, it's the ending of a 12-13-year cycle and the start of a 12-13-year cycle, wherever it is that Jupiter is making its transit. And that can be connected to, if there's alignment, to Jupiter's last transit through your 9th house. I've done a video on Jupiter's transit through Gemini. If you have questions about this, take a look at that video. Some of this will get answered there. But when it came to the Mars-Jupiter conjunction, I said you may well have an awareness of what it is that needs to be ended. You may do the ending, external circumstances may do the ending, something about that may be accelerated in such a way that it serves Saturn in Pisces. And the viewer wrote something to the effect of, in this case, Jupiter is transiting their 7th house, something to the extent of, or the effect of, does this mean that they have to end a relationship? I think I got the impression based on the comment that the relationship is actually going well and it's who they want to invest in as a partner. And does that mean that that needs to be ended? Is that what I mean? If something is going well and if something feels aligned, Jupiter is not seeking to end it. If there's alignment in the part of the chart that Jupiter is transiting, Jupiter is seeking to end a 12-13-year cycle, start of a 12-13-year cycle, to elevate, to spiral up in that direction. If, for example, Jupiter is going over the 10th house of career and you're following a career path that is right for you, Jupiter is going to ask and say, well, how can we take this forward to the next level? What do we need to end and begin to spiral it up? Fundamentally with Jupiter, it is an energetic ending and new beginning. It's like an Etch-a-Sketch that gets to be shaken and erased. Now, if Jupiter is going with the 10th house and the career is not aligned and does not feel aligned, it's not going to feel aligned if it's not aligned, then Jupiter may seek to provide a lucky break by ending something to create that opening for someone to move in a desired direction, either partially on the side or wholly or whatever that is. But if it's an aligned career and it's the right career, Jupiter's not going to seek to end something, especially if it feels like it's something that's desired. So in the 7th house, first and foremost, this is also an important clarification about the 7th house that everybody can avail of. The 7th house is, as I said, anybody, whether it is personal or impersonal, including the tax agencies like the IRS and banks and credit card companies, Anywhere where we have a handshake and a promise, written, verbal, tacitly understood, the working together of which can greatly enhance our lives, the breaking of which can have emotional, financial, and legal consequences. So dating and romance and romantic partners do not sit in the 7th house. But if you start to share finances, and if it starts to get taken to the next level, and lives start to get shared, then that person moves from the 5th to the 7th. And the nature of that relationship, the emotional and financial intimacy, and what it feels like on a day-to-day basis lives in the 8th. So when someone says, well, I may have only one person in the 7th house, that, in my experience, is not true. Family members, bosses, clients, anywhere there's a contract, anywhere there's an expectation of maintaining important relationships are, clients, agents, managers, where finances are involved, money owed to you, money owed by you, money held together. The right partners, the right partnerships, absolutely marriage partners and committed partners where there are financial agreements and sharing. The nature of the intimacy changes once finances are shared. How do people like to spend money? Do they lie? Do they tell the truth? Who is this person? It's a different quality of getting to know another person and supporting them through life. The nature of the intimacy, at its bedrock, emotional intimacy, transforms and changes when it moves into the 7th and 8th as opposed to the 5th, which is connection and dating and joy and magic and sparkles and rose-colored glasses and joy. But it is not living together. It is not supporting each other in a way that has a financial reality. But Jupiter and Mars conjuncting, contributing and pushing for this transformation is not about ending something that is working or that you want to build towards. It may, if it involves this particular person and not any other significant relationship, may ask the question, does this need to be evolved, taken to the next level, built on? Is there an ending of a 12-13 year cycle and start of a 12-13 year cycle there? That is the best I can do in a general reading. And yes, there's a correlation with the transits between Saturn going over the 4th in this case. I would imagine that you are Sagittarius rising, the person who asked this question. I don't go into personal stuff, but there's absolutely no way that I can become more specific than this other than a personal reading. And typing all this in the comments would have just been crazy. I also thought it was a really interesting question. We're dealing with the Mars-Jupiter conjunction. And for folks who have been with me through this part of the discussion, listen to the weekly overview and reflect on what ending and new beginning is being created in the Gemini part of the chart. Reflect on, to the best of your ability, how that new beginning and accelerating that ending and new beginning and what to leave behind, or in certain cases, who to leave behind, or what to leave behind energetically can help Saturn stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. Reflect on it. And if it becomes too much of a headache, you don't have to. Just because someone is saying something on YouTube doesn't mean it has to completely resonate. But I thought it was an interesting enough query or question that I thought I would expand on it here. All right, let's talk about the Mercury cycle. A Mercury cycle in a particular part of the chart starts when a retrograde Mercury conjuncts the Sun. After that Sun conjunction, as Mercury is retrograde and goes direct, that is the first phase. There are 4 phases. So retrograde Mercury conjuncts the Sun and then keeps moving back, and the Sun starts to move forward, and then Mercury goes direct, in this case on August the 28th. So August the 18th ends the Aries communication cycle. On April the 11th of this year, a retrograde Mercury and the Sun met up in the sign of Aries and started the Aries communication cycle. On April the 25th, Mercury went direct. By June the 14th, a direct Mercury picked up enough speed to meet up with the Sun again on June the 14th, ending phase 2. June the 14th, Mercury moved past the sun until August the 4th, when it went retrograde, end of phase 3. And August the 4th to August the 18th, when the retrograde Mercury met up with the sun, end of phase 4, start of phase 1 for the Leo communication cycle. Retrograde Mercury meets up with the sun August the 18th. The sun starts to move forward. Mercury is moving backwards. August 28th, Mercury goes direct. Start of phase 2, Mercury picks up speed, meets up with the sun on September the 29th. End of phase 2, start of phase 3. I'll explain what the phases are. September 29th, start of phase 3, Mercury is moving ahead of the sun all the way to November 26th, when Mercury goes retrograde in Sagittarius and meets up with the sun on December 5th, ending the Mercury cycle in Leo and starting the Mercury cycle in Sagittarius. The first phase, when a retrograde Mercury meets up with the sun, and while it is still retrograde, is like a requirements definition. What is this Leo communication cycle going to be about? Do not underestimate, in my experience, the communication cycles, my friends. I find that the Mercury cycles are a strong foundation that occur. They're like a drumbeat. They're like, I can explain it. They're like this through line in the middle of all the drama and everything else that is going on a day-to-day basis, and new moons and full moons and eclipses and Venus here and Mars there and Mercury here and Jupiter here and Saturn here and squares and oppositions and trines and all that kind of stuff. You have a Mercury cycle that just keeps going. And if you actually paid attention to the Capricorn part of your chart, where you had a Mercury cycle between December and April, and see what got built through communication and transactions, through Mercury-related things, technology, communication, transactions related to the Capricorn part of your chart. Then starts in the Aries part of the chart, April 11th. April 11th to August 18th. It hasn't ended yet. What has been marching on in the Aries part of your chart? And now, starting August 18th, what commences to be built and created through communication and transactions in the Leo part of the chart all the way to December the 5th. August 18th to August 28th, getting clear on what this needs to be. Expressing something, creating something through communication. Creating a channel for transactions. Advertising, marketing, but also talking, communicating, making yourself heard, making yourself clear, expressing yourself. August 28th to September 9th is phase 1. Mercury is behind the sun, it's direct, and it starts to pick up speed. And it meets with the sun on September 29th. August 28th, Mercury direct, September 29th, superior conjunction with the sun when Mercury is direct is phase 2. Implementing. The first round of implementing things, the most expansive part of doing this, doing that, launching this, launching that, communicating this, talking about this, making things happen. September 29th to November 26th, once Mercury surpasses the sun and until it goes retrograde again on November 26th, phase 3. Taking stock of what has been built, growing it, refining it, pruning it, fertilizing it, revising it, harvesting some of what it has provided. And the time when Mercury goes retrograde and meets up the sun, November 26th to December 5th, finishing and closing. One of the set of actions that you can take if you have Mercury direct in your birth chart while Mercury is retrograde is anything that completes the last Mercury cycle. I remember, because I have Capricorn in my 6th house of jobs and hustles and side hustles and the astrology and all that kind of stuff, how much of this channel got focus between December of 23 and April of 24. And it was when a retrograde Mercury was getting ready to meet up with the sun that I monetized the channel. finished up that arc. It's August the 15th till August the 18th. I don't know. Am I going to be able to put some finishing touches on what Mercury has been building for me in the 9th house because Aries sits in my 9th house? Time will tell, or something may come up that provides closure to what was been going on that is 9th house related for me. I'm not going to go into the details. I'm not here to share personal stuff related to my life necessarily. Since April the 11th. And as a Leo rising, it'll be interesting for me I already have a sense of what it is that I need to put my communication transactions around in my first house starting August the 18th that take me to December the 5th. Fine, bring it on. But there might be actions I take even the next 3 days to close out the communication cycle in the Aries part of the chart, the house occupied by Aries in your birth chart, and what that stands for. And indeed, I did something today that kind of helped cement that. I said no to something that honors that overall Aries arc. It's kind of fascinating how it works. With the Mercury cycle, with everything else that is going on, Mercury just continues to build. It can be a very helpful, productive set of actions that is happening underneath all the other stuff. So if you know which house is occupied by Capricorn in your chart, Aries in your chart, Leo in your chart, for Capricorn, December through April. For Aries, April through August 18th, April 11th to August 18th. For Leo, starting August 18th all the way to December 5th. It's like taking on a project at work. This project, this is what it's going to be. Building the... Now, because for me, the end of the year I was distracted by other things. And even into January, February, March, April, I was distracted by other things. The Mercury cycle just caught me by surprise. And I was just like, oh, but here it is. It moves forward so clearly. It can almost become a kind of a lifeline if your world is kind of up and down and there are other priorities pulling at you. And to my amusement, I was like, well, nothing stopped the Mercury cycle in Capricorn. And it was really helpful, and it was a joy to continue to build the channel at that point. And as I said, by the time the Mercury cycle ended, I had been able to monetize my YouTube channel. Now, monetizing does not mean this, that, or the other, but, it's a milestone. It'll be interesting what the closure to the Aries part of the chart brings as we head towards this full moon, as we head towards August the 18th. And then the Leo communication cycle begins. We've gone from weeks where we've had one transit or aspect to this week having... If we say that this week began on the 11th of the 12th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 aspects. Mars conjuncting Jupiter on the 14th, Mercury retrograding into Leo, the Sun trining Chiron today, Mars squaring Saturn today, Mercury squaring Uranus on the 18th, the Sun conjuncting Mercury, which is what we've just talked about on the 18th, Venus squaring Jupiter on the 18th. On the 19th, the full moon, Jupiter squaring Saturn, Venus opposing Saturn, the Sun squaring Uranus, and of course the full moon squaring Uranus. It's a happening week, and the weekly overview will give you a greater sense of the dynamism, the turmoil, the need for action, the need for helping the slower moving planets, the opposing faster moving planets serving the slower moving planets, the full moon accelerating a set of events. It's the stuff that change is made of. And while Mercury is retrograde and Mercury is getting ready to meet up with the Sun, very much about what this Mercury retrograde is about in the larger sense of what a Mercury retrograde is trying to tell us. Why would Mercury, after 3 months of moving forward, May, June, July, say, I need to reverse? Because Mercury is like, there's certain things that are not clear to you. You are too expansive in certain places. You've got too much, or you think you're committing to this and committing to this. Get back to what you're committing to, and let me show you what is real and what has been in your blind spot, or what you intuitively kind of know, but you are not completely committing to or factoring in. Go back to the drawing board, make those changes, and when Mercury starts to go direct again, as I said, after September 2nd, Mercury goes direct August 28th, September 2nd, by that time it is moving forward, September, October till Thanksgiving, forward movement again. And then Mercury goes direct, meets up with the Sun December 5th. Mercury goes retrograde, sorry, in Sag. November 26th, I think. But know and understand and try to attune to and try to adjust to, try to bring the Mercury cycles. Seriously, man, this Mercury retrograde, I mean, 2 of the 3 videos I've done in this, my computer has just decided to take on a life of its own. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole again in front of you guys. I wanted to do this video just because I think Mercury cycles are important, and I just wanted to bring them to your consciousness, and I just want to gently start to bring them to your consciousness so that you can start to attune to them more and more and more, and see what they mean to you, and see what these 4 phases mean. Yes, Mercury retrograde conjunct Sun is combust, and Mercury does not have a lot of power, and some of the communications, etc., might be a little bit awry. It might be hard to make decisions. It might Mercury, the mind, the communicate, is not behaving, is not empowered, but it's at a retreat with the Sun. They're going to be behind closed doors, and the Sun is going to say, here's what's what, and this is what we're going to base a whole set of actions related to communication on, and transactions, and this is what we're going to build till December the 5th in the Leo part of the chart. This is what we're committing to. This is what I want you to recognize. This is the fantasy stripped away. This is what we know is real. This is going back to the drawing board. The reason why Mercury is combust is so that it can be behind these closed doors with the Sun, and the mind and the soul can catch up. And then take things from there. As I've mentioned to you, the Leo part of the chart is important. We have when I did that recent video on all the transits through Virgo, I said that the Virgo transits of the personal planets are more dramatic. You know, the oppositions to Saturn and the opposition to Neptune and the trining of Uranus, the Leo trines to Chiron and the North Node, and the square to Uranus are momentous, but they're not quite as loud. They help move things forward in the direction that we want to. But it's a complicated set of transits through Leo with Mercury going retrograde. There's a whole set of adjustments that's going on. The Virgo personal planets transit right now, Venus, soon the Sun, eventually Mercury, the new moon on the 2nd, that's going to oppose Saturn, 2nd of September. All that kind of good stuff is louder. The decibels are louder. But the Leo part of the chart not only is going to have this not only is Leo going to have Mercury in it till September the 9th, but then Mars comes into Cancer on September the 4th, 2nd, something like that, 6th. Give me 1 sec, let me get to the exact date. Mars comes into Cancer September the 4th, and then it comes into Leo November the 4th, and then it goes retrograde in Leo December the 6th, 1 day after the communication cycle is completed. And then Mars stays in Leo, goes direct on, actually Mars goes into Cancer, retrogrades into Cancer January 6th, goes direct on February the 24th in Cancer of next year, and then comes back into Leo in April, I think. Yeah, on April the 18th. And then is in Leo all the way to June, if I'm not mistaken. I am not mistaken, till June the 17th. So the Leo part of the chart gets a lot of love. We've had the personal planets move into Leo in July, opposing Pluto just after they moved in. We felt those oppositions to Pluto in July. And a retrograde Mars is going to oppose Pluto. So this communication cycle, the Mars transit coming up, the Leo part of it is there's a real transformation at work. There's a project at work in the Leo part of the chart. There's an edifice that needs to be built. And this communication cycle has something to do with that. It's going to be that Mars transit that is really going to put the icing on the cake, that is going to dot the I and cross the T and revise goals and figure out what it is that we want to go after in the Leo part of the chart, and what we want to go back to the drawing board on, and what sort of conflict we want to get involved in, what conflict we don't, and all that kind of stuff. And we'll cover that when Mars gets into Cancer. I'll do a video on that in early September. This is all I want to say for now, because tracking Mercury cycles is a very personal business. You have to know your chart to some extent. Not to some extent, ideally you have to know which house does Aries sit in, which house does Leo sit in, what does that house stand for, who does it stand for, what could possibly need to be built there. I want to give you this information. With astrology, it takes time to develop a relationship with your chart, to track the transits, to think, what does Venus do every time she comes into a part of a chart and makes that transit? What does Mars do every time this happens in different parts of the house? How does the Mars energy show up in my life? How does the Venus energy show up in my life? What happened the last time Venus was doing? What happened the last time there was a new moon in Leo last year? What happens the last time this happened? It's through that awareness that you really get a sense of the magic, I think, where you're able to make sense of the transits for your own chart. And talking about something this time around with Mercury retrograde conjuncting the Sun, I don't know if I'll be able to do it in the next 3 days or not, but the idea of creating memberships, and I'm not thinking of creating expensive memberships, that allow people to build a relationship with their own chart, that is my agenda. And it feels like it's something that I really, as I mentioned to you a few videos ago, when I was toying with doing shorts and memberships, and also this kind of $50 30-minute readings right now as a potential offering, and I was thinking expansively about what it ties into, what is it that I want to complete from a ninth house perspective for me. So anyway, wanted to give you this information. I am going to stop chattering now. I hope you found it useful. If this information you think is useful for others, feel free to share it. Tell people about my channel. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already. If you're interested in getting a reading, whether it is the single topic $50 reading or a proper reading of your chart, my email, or a more thorough reading of your chart, I should say, not just a single topic or area of focus. My email address is in the description box below. You can email me there and I can give you information. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. There's a bell icon next to the subscribe button. Hover over that, wiggly bell on top, click on that, and you'll be notified whenever I do new videos. There's a thanks button underneath this video. You can use that to contribute to the channel. Comment, like on the videos. It gives it greater circulation on YouTube if you so desire. I hope I didn't offend the person who left that comment. I just thought it was a valid point of clarification, and I thought the clarification itself might be useful for everybody to some extent. But beyond a certain point, there's only so much I can do generally too. So take what, these are general readings. Thank you, amigos. I will be back in touch soon. I think the next video, it is going to be time to do the full moon in Aquarius video. We kind of already know what's building, but I will give it some specificity, some further specificity over the next couple of days. So look out for that, probably on the 17th, if not the 18th. I should do it on the 17th, considering the full moon is on the 19th. And I've already talked a lot about the full moon, so don't feel gypped by that. There's a weekly overview. They're videos from last week. There's the August video. There's the Leo new moon video. They all talk about the Aquarius full moon. All right, over and out. Thanks.